This is just a 24-foot pontoon boat. We stripped everything off the deck, put a different console on, put a couple davits with some guy wires to give a little more support. This is not original to us. Any number of aquaculturists are using these pontoon boats as work platforms now. But what we did was we only put hand-operated winches on here. We've purposely set it up so it's very manual right now. Rather than investing a lot in hydraulics and something that may not work exactly the way we want it to work, we figured we could do it this way, and we'll work for a season or two, see how it goes. So one of the things we do with our lines when we're harvesting is we wash the seaweed well, and we just use the deck hose here. What I was just doing was I was just rinsing all the containers. These containers we use just for seaweeds. About 15 to 20 minutes ago, we sprayed them with a Clorox solution as a sanitizing step. So gave it contact time, and now, it was just a quick rinse to get the Clorox off. So now we're ready to go, and we're going to head out to the line. On this boat, we shoot for 400 pounds an hour. That includes washing, that includes some trimming, that sort of thing. So it's not just a matter of cutting everything off the line and throwing in a container. Right at our farm here in this location, the water's fairly turbid, particularly late in the season. There's apt to be a film, a little bit of surfaced mud, that just comes from the suspended sediments in the water. So we're just giving it a good wash. I think whether we were at a site that was like this or any site, a wash is a good first step. What Peter's doing is he's getting a good part of the blade. This is pretty late in the season. We're looking for larger blades that we can hang up in a greenhouse and dry. So we're cutting them off without the stipe, and we're cutting the tips off because the tips are more likely fouled. And this late in the season, things like hydrozoans and other epizoids are something we don't want to have on our dried product. This is a good example. Kelp is attached to the line there with a holdfast. That's a stipe, and this is the blade. This is the actively growing part of the blade. This is the oldest part of the blade, so it's actively growing from the stipe end and elongating. What I did was I just cut off, and I'll cut off a little bit more of the fouling. If we took this blade and cut it right there, this piece would continue to grow. And in fact, that's one of the strategies in maximizing the return on a line. We find it's not worth it, because there's a time of year when that would really be beneficial. This time of year, we're not going to gain very much by doing that two-step process. These lines were seeded in early December. We checked the kelp a few weeks after it's been seeded, just to see how it looks. In December, wouldn't necessarily get a large amount of growth, but then on a monthly basis, we take a look at it take some samples after a month or two and measure the length and width of the plants, and that gives us an idea of what our crop will look like when it comes time to harvest season, and gives us a chance to make some estimates on the size of the harvest. So yes, we keep an eye on the growth through the season. There's a big growth spurt in March, towards the end of February, in March. The days start getting longer. The kelp is accumulated, a lot of reserves, and that growth will continue through April. This time of year, it's pretty well slowed down, but it still is actively growing. You can look at this piece right here, and that's the oldest part of the blade. You can see the blade's relatively narrow right there, but it's expanded out. That's because it is not only actively growing, but it's a growth spurt. So that's a good sign, particularly in June, which is late in the season for a farmed crop.
Can you talk about your harvesting tool?
It's just a simple knife, Victorinox knife, serrated edge. We started using them without the point on them because we don't need the pointed tip, and it's partially a safety issue. They're extremely sharp, and of course, the kelp is not a really tough material to cut through, but it's just a simple matter of making sure you keep an eye on where your knife is, particularly if there's 2 or 3 people working around you, and just basically whacking away. What I'm doing is I'm trying to pick out the larger blades. We'll go back and we'll cut some more as a sample for a fellow that's coming from University of Maine in Orono to pick up in about probably half an hour. So we started seeding in September, and we finished in early December, which is that's a good range for this location, a good range of dates to seed. Our peak times for seeding is October and early November. That's the best for this location to give us a crop that we could harvest as early as March. If we're including the stipes, which I'm going to start a tote here because we've got somebody that's coming down that's going to use the smaller plants and the stipes. If we're including the stipes and just cutting off somewhat below the stipes, we can do easily 400 pounds an hour just cutting like that. When we're more selective, like you were just watching us, we're being very selective. A couple hundred pounds would be good. So it's a slow process, and that's one of the things that we've got to improve on here. So by July, this will have deteriorated to a large extent. We've taken truckloads and sent it or given it to local farms for compost. And we've just simply stripped everything off the line, and it will decompose very, very quickly.
Well, stipes seem pretty tight on there. I mean, how do you strip them off of the...
Well, after I'm going to be careful with this knife because I don't want to cut the line. We use a relatively dull knife, and if we have stipes that are as tight as that, we just cut along. The holdfasts are, I think I said stipes earlier, but the holdfasts are really tightly attached to the line, and they're not going to come off very easily right now. Another month they'll come off quite easily. Our lines are 450 to 500 feet long. I think for us, I think probably 600 would be a better length, but this is what we can fit in the lease that we have. There are mooring balls at either end of the lines, and the moorings are about 100 to 125 feet from that mooring ball on the edge of the lease, and we're using screw anchors right now. We've used mushrooms. Mushrooms don't hold in some parts of this lease, so we went to screw anchors as being a good fail-safe way of getting our moorings in. So we're, once you put screw anchors in, you're pretty well fixed. You know, you've fixed your configuration.
How big are those screw anchors?
They vary in size. The firmer the bottom, the smaller screw anchor you can use. You don't need to use huge screw anchors in a hard bottom, a relatively hard bottom. And we've got a mix here, but we've also got some really soft sediments. And in the soft sediments, we're using 6-foot screw anchors. I forget the diameter of the screw, and putting them right down flush with the bottom. So.